Several months ago, my former girlfriend betrayed our 15-year relationship by cheating with a coworker. Having experienced infidelity in her previous marriage, she was initially hesitant about diving into another marital commitment when we started dating. We found contentment as boyfriend and girlfriend, sharing everything like a typical married couple, finances and our jointly owned house, split 50-50, excluding the marriage certificate. Despite her inability to have children due to a past accident, we led a life resembling that of a married couple. Our families struggled to appreciate our zest for unconventional living, including yearly travels to different countries, such as Bali 2 years ago and Bolivia the following year, with the ultimate goal of visiting every country on our bucket list. In our late 40s, the ironic twist is that her ex-husband's infidelity led to their divorce, and I entered her life as a supportive partner, helping her heal, rebuild, and regain trust over years. Surprisingly, she repeated the same mistake with a married coworker. A few years ago, my girlfriend joined a new department at work, frequently discussing her male colleagues, especially one she considered a good man. According to her, his wife didn't appreciate him, leading to arguments. She even provided relationship advice and suggested gifts for his wife. However, one day she came home and revealed he had become inappropriate, prompting her to limit their relationship. Despite my persistent inquiries, she refused to disclose details, insisting it didn't matter. After hours of pressing, she admitted it was physical. Feeling offended, she aimed to reestablish professional boundaries. Though reluctant to report the incident to HR, I encouraged her to create a record. Eventually, he apologized, and their relationship returned to normal. Update. A few weeks prior to our August vacation, I couldn't help but notice my girlfriend had purchased some daring swimwear, seemingly fit for a Victoria's Secret fashion show. I thought, this vacation is going to be exciting. While in Costa Rica, I found her posing in front of the bathroom mirror in that swimwear, taking selfies. When I questioned the purpose of the pictures, she claimed they were for nobody. Pushing for clarity, she explained it was for personal enjoyment, as she had never felt this good about her appearance. Throughout our vacation, her preoccupation with her phone grew, and she insisted on more revealing photos. On the 4th day, I stumbled upon a picture of an unknown man in a compromising position on her phone. Disturbed by the thought that she might be sharing photos with other guys on Instagram, especially given her constant photo taking, I considered that it couldn't be just for me. However, her phone was kept too close, making it impossible to check without waking her. The idea of getting her drunk crossed my mind, but it felt too extreme. By the end of the trip, I strongly suspected she was taking those photos for someone else, leaving me feeling used. Once back home, I remained distant and irritable, a change my girlfriend noticed. Despite her inquiries about what was wrong, I refrained from sharing my suspicion immediately, lacking proof and not wanting to push her underground if there was an emotional affair. When she questioned my demeanor, I expressed my concern that our vacation seemed more about her and her phone than us, emphasizing it as a genuine worry. I offered an opportunity to talk, but she declined. Update. I was desperate to access her phone, so I added a sleep-inducing mixture to her dinner. It worked perfectly, and she fell asleep quickly. Attempting to sneakily grab her phone, I discovered it was password protected, and I didn't know the code. Frustrated with myself, I devised a genius plan to trick her into revealing the password. The next day, her securely locked phone was on the kitchen counter. I seized the opportunity, telling her I wanted to take a photo of her cooking and needed to use her phone for its superior camera. Without suspicion, she handed it over. As she entered her password, I played it cool, acting like everything was normal, and it worked. I finally gained access to her phone. To deepen her sleep again, I added something to her dinner and took the chance to check her phone while she was away. It turned out she had messages from numerous interested guys on Instagram, but she maintained her class by not responding or sending pictures. However, my curiosity led me to discover a connection with her married coworker. Their texts, although not too explicit, hinted at a romantic involvement, with requests for pictures and exchanged goodnight messages. Despite spending the entire day with him at work, she was texting him more than me. Although incriminating pictures were deleted, she didn't realize the phone saved them. A rookie mistake indeed. The next day, I embarked on a wild goose chase to find a good SMS spy app to snoop on my girlfriend's phone. 2 days later, I spiked her food again and installed the spy app. The next morning, I confronted her about her affair with her coworker. She denied it, so I demanded to see her phone. Reluctantly, she handed it over, unaware that I had already seen all the incriminating text messages through my spy app. I proceeded to show her explicit photos of her coworker from her phone gallery, and her face turned redder than a tomato. She tried to lie her way out of it, but I wasn't having it. I reminded her that willingly sending such pictures still constituted cheating. When she attempted to make excuses, I declared the relationship over and intended to confront her coworker. Despite her pleas, I stood my ground, asserting he disrespected me and his own wife by sending those photos to my girlfriend. A massive fight ensued before I drove 45 minutes to her workplace and waited for her and her affair partner to return from lunch. Waiting for them in the parking lot, I felt like a ninja, even though I knew my relationship with my girlfriend was done. I wanted to make a scene and not let him off the hook for disrespecting me. As soon as he stepped out of the car, I landed a soccer punch on him. Although he didn't go down, he was visibly wobbly. Some coworkers witnessed the incident, while my girlfriend attempted to restrain me. Insults were exchanged in front of everyone, and I accused them of avoiding each other. Despite his fear, he didn't know whether to run inside or drive away. I continued to offend them as more people gathered. My girlfriend pleaded for me to leave, claiming I would ruin her life. After stating my piece, I got back into my car and drove away. That night, my girlfriend didn't return home, texting me that I was the worst human being ever. Despite her denials of the affair, she accused me of ruining her life with false accusations. I pointed out that I have a female coworker and I never send her explicit photos. I suggested she could leave if she wanted, so she chose to stay with a friend. The next day, she returned, begging to stay in the relationship. I hesitated, informing her that I couldn't take her back now that I knew she was involved with her coworker. So, over the next couple of weeks, my girlfriend and I were cohabitating like two strangers sharing the same roof. Eventually, we resumed communication, and things began to return to a semblance of normalcy, whatever that means. I had been monitoring her texts, and it seemed like their communication had ceased. However, she urged us to move on and put the past behind, while I desired a confession from her. Eventually, she admitted to exchanging some photos and engaging in an emotional affair, but she denied any physical involvement with her coworker. Unfortunately, the spy app provided no evidence of a physical affair. So I decided to work on our relationship, and we were doing fine. She even found a new job the next month, and everything seemed to be back to the way it was before she cheated on me. But my world was shattered again when I saw a suspicious charge on my credit card for $350 for a pair of men's shoes and some other expenses. I was shocked when my girlfriend gave me a pair of shoes that weren't my style, and I suspected that they were meant for someone else. I tried using a spy app to monitor her texts, but it didn't work with her coworker. Then I remembered some relationship advice that says affairs can go underground, so I thought she might have a secret phone. I sneaked into her car at night to find it, and to my surprise, I found an old flip phone under the seat. It wasn't password protected, and all their incriminating texts were right there for me to see, dating back to the time when I confronted them at their job site. So, I snooped around and found out that my girlfriend was buying gifts for her side piece to get back in his good graces. They were meeting up in hotels, and even my own house for some steamy action. And of course, it was all right there in their text messages. I took a bunch of pics of those messages, and let me tell you, they were longer than the line at the DMV. From what I could see, she was the one pushing for everything, but it all fell apart when the guy got the boot from work because of their little rendezvous. Still, she was head over heels for him, sending him these epic messages while he just replied with a K or an emoji. But I had a plan. I had cameras all over my house, so if they came over, I would catch them red-handed. I even slept on the couch just in case they showed up. And I gotta say, it was a pretty low point for me. I mean, I wasted 15 years of my life on this woman, and who knows how long she had been stepping out on me. And to top it all off, I found out that I was just her backup plan, while she was trying to get with some married guy who was practically young enough to be her son. Oh, and by the way, she can't have kids because she messed up her womb with a botched termination. The next day I woke up early and bolted to work to avoid seeing her face. I couldn't concentrate on work and just wanted to go back home to check if the camera had recorded my girlfriend and her fling sneaking into my house. When I finally got home, I discovered that the camera's memory had been wiped clean, leaving only a week's worth of footage. I felt like I was stabbed in the back. Not only did she buy a burner phone to keep her affair a secret, but now she's also wiping the camera footage to cover her tracks. When she came back home, I was waiting for her with all the incriminating text messages on full display. I confronted her about the affair and she couldn't deny it, since the text messages from her burner phone were right there. She admitted to having a 2-year-long affair with him and even claimed to have loved him, but now she's realizing that she was being used by him. According to her, he promised to leave his wife for her, but it turns out he was just trying to get into her pants. I told her that I understood that his wife wasn't treating him well, but what did I do to deserve this kind of disrespect? Did I miss something? What was it that made him want to smash my girlfriend instead of staying loyal to his wife? So this woman I've been with for a long time suddenly desires something different, claiming I'm not as romantic and attentive as before. However, when I caught her in the act, I presented her with receipts of her buying expensive items for her affair partner, who wasn't reciprocating. She couldn't come up with any excuse and fell silent. Later, I confronted her about the missing camera footage, and she denied knowing anything about it. Yet, when I showed her the text messages of her inviting the guy to our house, she had nothing to say. I suggested that we should break up and go our separate ways. She begged for forgiveness, but I wasn't sticking around for that. I even called a real estate agent to sell the house and split the profit 50-50. She told me to sleep on it, but I already had, and that was my final decision. It's a good thing I caught her before she could use any more of my hard-earned cash. The next day, I gave a buzz to a real estate agent, and he put the house up for grabs. Ending a 15-year relationship isn't a walk in the park. It took me a while to come to that decision. I finally realized that she just wasn't into me as much as I was into her, and it was time to call it quits. I thought I'd be with her till passing do us part, but that's what I get for thinking too much. My folks adored her, but she fell head over heels for some guy at work who probably was spinning yarns about how he's a prince in another dimension. She spent more time with him at work than with me at home. Enough time for him to get into her head and make her forget about me. This guy was married with kids, yet he was envious of me and wanted what I had. If I were his wife, I'd want to be informed of the situation, but that's none of my business. I was planning to tell his wife about the affair after I cut ties with my girlfriend. We still lived in the same house, but in separate rooms, only waiting for the house to sell before we parted ways for good. The property market was hot, so I was hoping to get it sold within a month or so. During that time, my ex couldn't care less. I changed the locks on my door and the security camera system to keep her away from my stuff. Can you believe she even invited him over to my house while I was out? She knew he was using her, and yet she still dodged him even in my own home while I was at work. If only my security camera had Wi-Fi to alert me, I would have caught them red-handed. Even though my ex is now my housemate and we're no longer in a relationship, if I had caught that guy in the act, I'd make sure he didn't leave alive. But I'm not a homicide perpetrator, so I'm good. 12 years ago, we purchased the house and owed around $160,000 on it. Recently, we listed it for $240,000, and just 3 weeks later, we sold it for $265,000. After paying the necessary fees and taxes, we split the leftover cash. I probably should have just let it go, but I made a promise to myself that I would expose her crud lover. The level of disrespect they showed me is just unacceptable. She even made me take pictures of her to send to him. When I confronted her about their affair, she lied and denied it. And then to add insult to injury, she brought him into our home knowing full well what could happen if I caught them in the act. Lucky for them, I have evidence of everything, including footage of him sneaking into my ex-girlfriend's bedroom. It's not pretty, but I'll be damned if I let them get away with it. It wasn't easy to find who his wife was and where the affair partner lives with his family. As I approached his wife, I found her to be a confident and sociable person, with whom it was easy to converse. However, when I revealed to her that her husband was having an affair with my ex-girlfriend, she became very anxious and demanded that I provide her with all the details right away. I explained to her that I didn't have all the evidence at that moment and that I intended to show her some text messages and video footage. Later that evening, we met at a restaurant where she confessed that she had already suspected her husband of having an affair, but she couldn't prove it due to his deceptive behavior. After some discussion, she agreed to meet me for lunch after work, and when she arrived, things were a bit tense between us. But being the jester that I am, I decided to lighten the mood and crack a joke about us having a little closeness session. And you know what? She actually chuckled. Maybe she was into it, or maybe she was just being sarcastic. Who knows? After that, we swapped some hilarious stories about how gross our respective partners were. It was a bonding experience, really, and before we said goodbye, we exchanged digits. Now, I didn't end up calling her for a one-night stand, but I did get a call from my wife's affair partner. I'm guessing he got my number from my ex-girlfriend. So, I got a call from this dude who sounded like he was auditioning for a role in a gangster movie. Apparently, he was mad that I talked to his wife about their little affair, and he was threatening to end my life for it. Good times, huh? Anyway, turns out his wife left him, and now they're battling in family court. I bet he's regretting getting involved with my ex-girlfriend in the first place. Speaking of which, she texted me a few times, saying sorry for bringing her crud man to my place when she knew I had security cameras. But you know what? I think she was just trying to hurt me because I ended things between us. She can't seem to see that she's the one who messed up. Instead, she's hoping I'll just take it up while she fools around behind my back. Yeah, that's not happening. Second story. I'm a 62-year-old man, and my ex-wife is 63. We were a couple for 2 decades, married for 17 of those years, and we have no children. Our divorce happened 8 years ago. I've been operating my own business for more than 37 years, even assisting her in launching 6 different businesses during our time together. Unfortunately, none of them succeeded or had a lasting impact. Her struggle with business paperwork and an overestimation of achievements due to inexperience were contributing factors. I've been divorced previously and have a daughter from that marriage, whereas she had never been married. Towards the end of our marriage, my ex-wife falsely accused me of cheating. I believe she was attempting to gather information by probing around. She claimed to be meeting someone with detailed information, and curious about her suspicions, I encouraged her to proceed. However, she didn't uncover anything, and the person she claimed had the information never materialized. Our dating history began when she was completing her MS degree, and I assisted in paying off her school loans. Both of us have ADHD, but she relies on multiple medications for more severe symptoms, while I only take one. She's a joy to be around, fun, gorgeous, and exceptionally smart. However, she can quickly become angry and craves attention intensely. In contrast, I'm more laid back, avoiding drama and confrontations. I enjoy cracking jokes and maintaining a light atmosphere. Despite my flaws, such as occasional procrastination, I don't fit the stereotypical alpha male mold. I aim to make people happy while also setting boundaries and prioritizing self-care. Although hesitant about marrying again, my girlfriend at the time insisted after 3 years of dating. I neglected to pursue a prenup, a decision I now recognize as a red flag because she refused to sign one. It was a mistake, and I should have been more cautious. By the time we met, I'd already been successfully running my business for over a decade. Initially, things were good, and we enjoyed our lives together, even purchasing a house. I'm not much of a social butterfly, more of a loner and a workaholic lacking close friends. On the contrary, she had many friends, but they seemed to come and go rapidly, a definite red flag. It took a few dates before we got close because she preferred to take things slow, but she also admitted to forming close connections quickly, another red flag. To add to it, she confessed to being cheated on in the past and having cheated on someone, a major red flag. The closeness between us was exceptional, but I always had to be the one making the first move. If consistent, everything was smooth, but any gap, like a few days without much closeness, required extra effort from me. This pattern extended to other aspects of our relationship, where I felt I was doing 80% or more of the work. Despite her knowing I would never cheat, she bragged about my loyalty and even defended men on a radio show. She proudly declared on Valentine's Day that her husband would never cheat. She was high maintenance, no exaggeration. Her medications, insurance, and affinity for luxury added up to significant expenses. Additionally, she continually took various CE classes and attended expensive seminars to stay current in her profession. Those businesses she initiated also drained my finances. Although I started and sustained them, they never truly prospered. It turns out paperwork was a major obstacle in her profession, and those businesses couldn't keep up with it. It felt like pouring money down the drain, becoming expensive rapidly. She spent a full year in a city 100 miles away for training, followed by another 6-month stint in a different state for further training. Each time, she required an apartment and all the associated arrangements. But that's not all. She would also travel to weekend or week-long seminars for training, sometimes nearby and sometimes in an entirely different state. While uncertain, it made me question if she might be using these trips as an opportunity to cheat. One of the last trips I funded was in Florida, and then she informed me she needed a wax for her bathing suit, something she had never done before. Who knows if she connected with someone during those trips, but if she did, my guess is that it was with someone she met along the way. Then there was her 50th birthday party. She invited some of her female friends to our house for a weekend-long party, and guess what? I had to stay away and get a motel room because it was supposed to be a girls-only event. She made it clear that I better not be around or she'd be furious. I mean, seriously, could that be any more of a red flag? Around the halfway point of our marriage, she suddenly decided to quit a regular job and stay home to pursue her passion for gardening. Unfortunately, this coincided with an economic downturn, and money became tight. Consequently, I had to put in long hours at work to make ends meet, which seemed to upset her because she was at home all day feeling bored. When I'd return home after a long day, exhausted, and not always up for nonstop interaction, she'd get upset. It was a tough spot to be in. She openly admitted she was a bit of a princess, liking to be pampered and taken care of. Meanwhile, I handled my own chores, cooked my own meals, and performed household repairs. Despite my skills in repairs and going the extra mile to remodel a room into her office, she consistently criticized and doubted my abilities. I had to be patient with her and ignore the criticism. Finally, when it was all done, she reluctantly admitted that it looked great. At one point, she told me she needed a break and wanted me to move out. So I ended up buying a used camper and parked it on the business property, staying there for weeks to give her the space she said she needed. But then, one day when I went to the house to help her out with something, I slipped on the ice and got a concussion. It was no joke, and she insisted on taking care of me. We started talking again during that time, and eventually I moved back in. During the tough times with the economy and her decision to stop working, things started to change between us. I became more withdrawn and quiet, trying my best to make ends meet. But we were still falling behind on bills, and she wasn't contributing. Our bedroom life suffered too, practically non-existent for 2 years. Whenever I tried to initiate it, she would claim to feel anxious and shut down. We had both been going to therapy for years, mostly for me to get the medication I needed, and she would go for her own reasons too. She once thought she was offended as a child, but a therapist planted that idea in her head, and it turned out to be something that never actually happened. She used to tell her parents for years that she thought she was offended as a baby, but it turned out that wasn't true, and she finally admitted it. She has 3 sisters, one who is a couple of years older and has struggled with being in and out of a mental institution, another who is a couple of years younger and has had difficulties with holding down jobs, and a third sister who is a few years younger and seems to have the cognitive abilities of a grade school child and lives with an older woman. It's clear that all of her siblings have their own mental stresses to deal with. We attempted marriage counseling, which did offer some relief, but the underlying issues persisted. She still resisted contributing to our finances, and my resentment grew. During counseling, she would even provoke me into suggesting divorce. Finally, I reached my breaking point and agreed that we would get divorced. I never wanted to go down that road, as I am generally against divorce, but it felt like there was no other option left. Looking back, I can see that I unfairly accepted blame for many of her accusations because I was hurting and trying to avoid conflict. She had a way of twisting things around and making almost anything negative my fault. I believe in taking responsibility for my actions, but with her, I ended up shouldering the blame too easily, even when it wasn't really my fault. I did stand up for myself occasionally, but I realize I should have done it more often. I let myself be pushed around too much. Little did I know that she was already planning ahead and setting up the perfect conditions to get the most out of our divorce. If only I had discovered a forum about cheating during that time, things might have been different. I didn't handle the divorce well, and she intentionally stopped working for the last year of our marriage, claiming mental incapacity, just so she could get the best possible settlement. It was all a strategic move to maximize her alimony. It's frustrating to realize how she manipulated the situation to her advantage. Living in a no-fault state, Her affair didn't impact the divorce proceedings. However, I ended up having to pay her a significant amount, which the accountant claimed was only half of what it used to cost to live with her on a monthly basis. But it still stings every month and eats into my retirement savings and any potential savings I could have had. It's a constant reminder of the financial burden and emotional toll of the divorce. Around 15 years into our marriage, we reached a point where we were sleeping in separate rooms and had our own separate landlines and cell phones. She claimed she needed a separate landline for one of her imaginary businesses. One night, a phone rang, and I went to the living room to answer it, thinking it was an emergency call. In my sleepy and confused state, I accidentally picked up one of her landline phones and overheard her and her affair partner having a phone affair. I was completely stunned and slowly put the phone back down, feeling a mix of shock and betrayal. I retreated to my room, trying to process what I had just heard and figure out what to do next. I was so tempted to burst into her room and confront her right then and there when I overheard her having a phone affair with her AP. But instead, I had this crazy idea to try to record the calls for proof. I couldn't sleep that night, or for many nights after that. I rigged up a recorder on her landline, but it made a click sound when you picked up the receiver, so she quickly caught on and started using her cell phone exclusively. At that time, I had no idea about hidden cameras, voice-activated recorders, VRs, or cell phone apps for tracking and listening. She must have heard the click on her landline and figured out what I was doing, so she stopped using it altogether and only used her cell phone from then on. A few days after the phone affair, I used her Mac to attempt opening a storage drive that my PC couldn't handle. She was out for a walk. When I lifted the lid, boom! An unclothed picture of her appeared on the screen. I couldn't believe my eyes. Digging deeper, I realized she and her affair partner exchanged such pictures, a stark contrast to her past refusals during our marriage. It felt like a slap in the face since, throughout our marriage, I had repeatedly asked her to take an unclothed picture, and she always flatly refused. Astounded by what I found on her laptop, I took it to work and downloaded all the pictures and emails as evidence. Returning home, I handed her the laptop, pretending she misplaced it, as she often did with her keys due to her ADHD. Upon revealing the explicit content, she became furious, accusing me of invading her privacy on a laptop I had actually purchased for her. She threatened retaliation, asked about copies, and I played dumb, feigning ignorance on MacBook functions. It was a tense and confrontational moment, exposing her angry and manipulative behavior. After calming from her rage, I couldn't hold back my questions. I asked how she could send those pictures when she adamantly refused for years. Her response was callous, saying it was none of my business. I then directly asked about her relationship with AP, and she brazenly admitted to it. I was devastated. I reminded her that she had sworn never to cheat on me. Yet here she was, breaking promises and betraying our marriage. She insisted she wasn't cheating, but when I pressed on sending explicit pictures, she had no answer, evading my questions. Out of nowhere, she accused me of cheating first, claiming I had been watching X movies after we distanced over 2 years ago. Taken aback by her deflection, it felt like she was grasping at straws to justify her own actions. Trying to explain that watching X movies was not the same as having an affair, I asked her to imagine if we asked each of our parents which they would consider worse. She didn't answer that question. Instead, she got up and left. Later, I found out that she went to a neighbor and accused me of threatening physical offense, which was completely untrue. I realized then that I should have had a camera recording our conversation to help prove my innocence if it ever came up. It was a wake-up call for me to be more prepared in such situations and protect myself from false accusations. She insisted I vacate the house, but I resisted, knowing I hadn't done anything wrong. Instead, she stayed with a friend and later secured a separate rental until our divorce concluded. Meanwhile, I fell into a deep depression, unable to eat, focus on anything but work, and spent most of my time sleeping and crying. It was a dark and challenging period, leaving me emotionally drained and struggling to cope with the pain of the situation. When I finally saw her again a couple of weeks later, she remarked on how I looked good because I had lost a lot of weight. While both of us had gained some weight over the years, I never cared about her weight gain. I consistently found her beautiful and frequently reassured her of that. In fact, she would often strut around unclothed in front of me, asking if she looked gorgeous, and I would shower her with compliments, assuring her that she was. She seemed to constantly need reassurance about her appearance, and I did my best to provide it. After the incident with the pictures, she eventually apologized and asked for forgiveness. She even tried to get close to me, rubbing up against me. It was tough, but I told her that maybe someday I could forgive her, but not right now. Of course, she wasn't happy with my response. It just confirmed what I had always suspected. She's narcissistic, always putting her own needs and desires above others. A few days later, she was furious with me and blamed me for ruining her relationship with AP. She had told him that I had the pictures of him, and he got angry and broke it off. But honestly, I didn't care. She ended up getting me good with alimony in the divorce. Turns out, she had set up the situation with her lawyer, who was the only one willing to work with her because other lawyers thought she was crazy. I managed to keep my business, but I had to refinance the house in my name and settle considerable outstanding bills, including paying for her lawyer. Now she can go and try to find a sugar daddy, if she can. I must have been one of the very few men who had the patience and naivete to put up with her for the long haul. She knows better than to try and come back. There's absolutely no way I would take her back after everything she's done. She saw the look on my face when I met my ex-wife's new fiancé while picking up my daughter from her. Later, she had the nerve to ask me what I was thinking when I turned away and put my daughter's suitcase in the car. I told her straight up that I was thinking, "You poor sucker," about the fiancé. I sent a letter to her parents laying out the truth about what she had done, but also expressing gratitude for their previous role as great in-laws. We used to get along well, and I wanted to let them know what had happened. I asked them to take care of her because she clearly needed their support. After everything went down, she packed her bags and moved back to her parents' place, which was several states away from me. Since then, I've pretty much ghosted her, except for when I have to pay the damn alimony. It's funny how she originally said she wanted the house, but then suddenly changed her mind. I inquired why she suddenly opted to move back to her parents, and she explained it was because everyone in our town admired me thanks to my profession, while very few knew or liked her. I responded, stating that wasn't my fault, and she couldn't hold me responsible for her lack of popularity. I made a significant error by not closely monitoring my ex's actions and being overly trusting. It has been a costly mistake, and I am still facing the consequences. Lesson learned. If you observe your relationship taking a negative turn, pay attention. You don't want to end up in a predicament like I did. My advice to everyone is to seriously contemplate getting a prenup for the well-being of both partners. It's better to be safe than sorry. I am currently in a much better place. I am not actively dating, but I have female friends with whom I spend time and enjoy their company. I am content with doing what I want, when I want, and it brings me genuine happiness. Initially, my psychiatrist suggested I start dating, but now he acknowledges that I'm the happiest he's seen me in years and encourages me to continue doing what I'm doing. Update. She packed her bags and relocated 3 states away, close to her family, and I insisted on maintaining no contact between us. Despite her desire to remain friends, I declined. I don't want to be taken advantage of, and I see no reason to continue being involved in the chaos that seems to follow her. I endured it for years, but I don't trust her anymore. I have zero interest in knowing what she's up to or who she's with. It appears she's blocked me on all social media, but I haven't bothered blocking her because I simply don't care if she sees what I do. I'm only active on Facebook and Twitter. I hardly post on FB, maybe 2 or 3 times a year at most, just to keep up with my nieces, nephews, and their families. I suspect she blocked me on social media because my psychiatrist knows I worry about what would happen to her bank account if something were to happen to her. Her sisters might keep it open just to ensure my support payments keep coming in automatically. I know them well enough to suspect that. My psychiatrist even recommended that I check Facebook to see if she's still alive, but alas, I'm blocked from her profile. Honestly, the only thing I care about when it comes to her is whether she's still alive or not. I mean, I still have some feelings and love for her, but I try my best to block out thoughts about her. It's important for me to move on and fully get over the relationship. I'm pretty sure she's already found someone else, maybe even 2 or more guys. It's not surprising, considering how attractive she is and how outgoing her personality is. She's always been good at attracting attention from men. She's probably looking for someone to help support her because my monthly payments alone aren't enough to maintain the lifestyle she's accustomed to. She's brought up in the past how she wants to live like one of her widowed aunts who used to party a lot, wear miniskirts, and drive a flashy green Jaguar. It might be tough for her to find a lasting relationship. As I mentioned before, she didn't tie the knot until she met me. She had a few long-term relationships in the past that never led to marriage. From what I gather, most of them fizzled out because she got bored or was always on the lookout for something better. Or maybe those men figured out her true nature and decided to keep their distance. She mentioned to me before the divorce that her father advised her to try and work things out with me because it would be difficult for her to find a partner who was as reliable, caring, and patient as I was, especially all combined. She's always struggled with maintaining long-term friendships. Many people who started out as friends with her have told me that it was often a completely one-sided friendship, with her being the center of attention. It was similar to our relationship. We didn't have many couple friends because after spending time with them a few times, they would fade away. And some even mentioned to me that they felt uncomfortable around my wife. After pouring out all of this, it might seem like I'm blaming her entirely for the breakdown of our marriage and divorce. But that's not entirely true. I also have my own issues, like working too much and constantly carrying my work with me mentally. I slowly developed resentment because she wouldn't work and seemed to lose all ambition for a career. Despite my patience, some of her erratic behavior has worn me down over the years. It's not all on her. I acknowledge my struggles too. By the way, my clients have noticed that in the year following my divorce, I seem less stressed, and I smile and joke more. Overall, I appear happier. Even my doctor has mentioned that my blood pressure and cholesterol have improved. So while I do miss some aspects of the relationship, I am happier and better off being alone for now.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. "I will do my best." Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. "Did you not hear what I said?" "I'm sorry." I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, "I'm thirsty." Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. "I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime," he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick! What's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was. As the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.